hand it over to my colleague, Harsh Khemka. Harsh, it's been a fascinating day. We've learned so much, and I know you have a wonderful session lined up. Over to you, Harsh.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you, Liz, for sharing your insight. From New Zealand, we now go to Australia. It's our pleasure to have Ms. Julie Mann-Grant join us for this summit. Ms. Grant is Australia's e-safety commissioner. In this role, Julie leads the world's first government agency committed to keeping its citizens safer online. She has extensive experience in the nonprofit and government sectors and spent 2 decades working in senior public policy and safety roles in the tech industry. As commissioner, Julie plays an important global role, and as chair of the Child Dignity Alliance Technical Working Group and as a board member of the We Protect Global Alliance. She was recently designated one of Australia's most influential women by the Australian Financial Review. It's my pleasure to invite Ms. Grant to take over the session and share her insight. Over to you, Julie.
Let's see if these slides work. All right. Oops, I put the wrong one up. I'm sorry. Let me try this again. Am I still in? Hello, am I still in?
Yes, Julie.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear anything. And I can't see you. And I'm just trying to find my presentation, which seems to have disappeared. Here we go. Let me try this one more time. Am I sharing? Apparently not.
You can't see our presentations yet, Julie.
Probably should have provided it to you. It's on my screen, but it's obviously not on yours. My apologies. Let me try one more time.
Sure. Yeah, we can see the flashes.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
You can see it now. Great. Let me start here. Thank you. Sorry for those those technical difficulties. Why don't I start? It's really great to be speaking to all of you today about the Masoom Summit and to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself and what we do at eSafety and how I believe as a global community, we all have a role to play in making the internet safer for everyone, especially those who are most vulnerable among us, our children, of course. It's wonderful that on the same day we're discussing the safety of our children online, it's also World Children's Day, a day devoted to their welfare. I think it's also fitting that Masoom roughly translates to innocence, because this is the core of what drives all of us here, to harness the benefits of the internet while minimizing the risks and to protect the sanctity of childhood online. And I'm so pleased to be invited by the young Indians to give this speech, because I think when it comes to making the internet a safer and more civil place, the youth of today really are in the driver's seat. Because I know when you're young, it's easy to feel a little bit powerless, and that somehow, maybe because of your age, your views, and that your concerns aren't taken as seriously. Admittedly, my own experience of this was a little while ago now, but I do remember those feelings and how I wanted to change things too. But more than any other generation, you do have the power to reshape your world. And just think of the incredible young people making a real difference to the planet today. From teen environmental warrior Greta Thunberg giving a voice to the world's youth on climate change, to the world's youngest Nobel laureate, Malala, champion every woman's basic right to education. And it's interesting that in this digital age of Insta celebrities, that these two amazing women are global celebrities, not because of the number of followers they have on social media, because they're making a real impact in the world and giving a voice to those who have previously had none. The action that you personally take might include addressing climate change too, tackling global poverty and hunger, or even creating a more hospitable online landscape. The sky is really the limit. While climate change and global poverty are a little outside of my area of expertise, as Australia's e-safety commissioner, I do have a few ideas about how we might achieve a safer, kinder, and more civil internet, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about that today. Before I begin, I thought I'd give you a little glimpse into my own youth and what drove me as a young woman to agitate for change within the technology industry. Today, I like to describe myself a little bit as a poacher turned gamekeeper. Because before I became Australia's e-safety commissioner, I spent 22 years working inside the technology industry. I like to think that I lived the social dilemma to a certain degree. I spent 17 years at Microsoft and basically grew up there, starting out as one of their first Washington, D.C. lobbyists right before the US antitrust case against them. I remember the first day on my job in DC, I phoned up one of the executives at Microsoft headquarters in Redmond, and he hung up on me. He said, "Send me an email." And what that said to me, apart from how rude he was that I was going to really need to serve as a diplomat between these two worlds, the world of policy and the world of technology. And I learned very early on then that as far as the tech industry was concerned, that the starting position was that government should stay out of their business and just let them do their thing. And I believe that is an attitude that still persists today across the tech industry. But it really wasn't until later on, when I became head of global privacy and safety, that I really started to see some systemic problems. I remember warning our executive team that we needed to start building safety into our platforms. And I remember one male executive saying, "Why should we? We're never going to own a social media company, and we're moving towards the enterprise." Now, at that time, Skype was a platform being used by predators to live stream child sexual abuse material, and toxic online bullying was rife on Xbox Live. But what I found at that time and again, that there was no real will to elevate user safety to the same levels as the industry gods as privacy and security. And I do believe if you think of privacy, security, and safety as three legs of the stool, if one falls out of balance, then the stool will surely tip over. And I'm hoping now is the tipping point for safety, because it's really about personal harms and protecting users. So fast forward a few years, and I joined Twitter in 2014 as its Director of Public Policy, Philanthropy, and Trust and Safety for Australia and Southeast Asia. And I genuinely believed in the platform's promise to be a vehicle for freedom of expression and for allowing people to speak truth to power, that great leveler. But gradually, I began to see how Twitter was being misused to target women and other vulnerable populations. And that effectively led to silencing them. So in fact, rather than being a tool of freedom of expression, it was becoming a tool of suppression. And so I left after 2 years, and I took on a regulatory role, using my insider knowledge of the way that the tech companies think and work to really help encourage change. And I suppose you could say that I really failed as an internal safety antagonist, but now I have the opportunity to change things from the outside, which is incredible opportunity. But one of the valuable lessons that I did learn from my time in industry is that it is better to do this with industry than to them, because I know that there are also times when I need to pull out the big stick. So it's a little bit of a dance, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about this later. But first, let me talk to you a little bit about what e-safety is all about. So e-safety is still the only government online safety regulator in the world whose sole purpose is the protection of its citizens online. And we achieve this through a focus on what I call the 3 Ps: protection, prevention, and proactive change. And it's in this first area of protection that I'd like to begin. E-safety has a range of civil powers to compel the takedown of illegal or harmful content, whether it's child sexual abuse material, pro-terrorist content, what we call image-based abuse, or the serious cyberbullying of a child. And it's online bullying where our story really began in 2015. At that time, the Australian government began to dip its toe in the water of online regulation, knowing that few could really argue against the fact that the most vulnerable online were children. So we were originally established as the Children's E-Safety Commissioner. Part of the shiny new agency was a world-first cyberbullying complaint scheme, which was set up to provide a safety net to Australian kids affected by serious online bullying, because we knew that the volumes were high, that sometimes culture and context were missed, and a lot of reports were falling through the cracks. And we felt this safety net was critical so that we could advocate on behalf of our citizens, because there was an inherent power balance between the large behemoths and the everyday user, as they say. And in Australia, we know that 1 in 5 kids have been cyberbullied, and that this online abuse tends to be peer-to-peer. The average age is 14. Girls are bullied more than boys. And this is often an extension of face-to-face bullying that's happening in the schoolyard, which is very different from the characteristic of adult cyber abuse that we see, which tends to be adults attacking other adults based on a range of intersectional factors or politics and the like. So we're proud that we've helped thousands of young people get content taken down from the internet that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to. Sadly, about 15% of the reports we receive involved direct threats of harm, and we're also seeing a rise in the use of impersonation and imposter accounts, including the act of phoenixing, where multiple accounts are created to target a specific child, and soon as one is taken down from the platform for violations, another will pop up in the space. So you can imagine how relentless this must be for the children who are targets of this kind of tactic. And we know that bullying can be hard enough for kids, but when it moves online and follows them outside the school gates, into those little supercomputers, into their pockets, into their homes, and even into their bedrooms, it can be overwhelming. And that's why the quicker we get the cyberbullying content down, the quicker kids who fall victim to it can recover and get back to living their lives. So from these humble beginnings, our remit protecting Australians from online harms has expanded considerably. E-Safety now provides another world-first government-led reporting service for victims of image-based abuse, where someone's intimate images or videos have been shared or threatened to be shared without their consent. You may have heard of this form of abuse described in the media as revenge porn, but we prefer not to use that terminology because, simply put, it's victim blaming. We ask, revenge for what? So our research shows that image-based abuse affects 1 in 10 Australians, mainly affecting women, and 1/3 of our reports are from people under the age of 18, where it becomes sexting gone wrong. Under the age of 18, it then becomes child sexual abuse material as well, which is why we sit all of our different investigative teams together so that we can triage, and we see a lot of symbiosis between reporting queues. Since October 2017, we've helped thousands of victims get their intimate images and videos taken down online. And despite the fact that most of this material is hosted overseas, We've been successful in having it removed in about 85% of cases from hundreds of overseas platforms. And while there are criminal statutes on the books in most states and territories in Australia, going through the courts can be a stressful and expensive and a long-term process that is traumatic for victims. So we find that when they come to us, what they generally just want is for the content to be taken down. Now, at the pointiest end of the online harm spectrum is our cyber report team, an extremely dedicated group of men and women focused on disrupting online child sexual abuse material and dealing with other forms of illegal and harmful online content. We have seen a sustained rise in the distribution of sexual abuse material over the past 5 years. And last year alone, our investigators handled about 14,500 reports, with more than 13,000 of them involving child sexual abuse material. And we're sadly seeing higher volumes of child sexual abuse material being produced by children themselves, using smartphones, tablets, and other connected devices. We refer to this material as coerced rather than self-produced child sexual abuse content, where vulnerable children are often being groomed, manipulated, intimidated by predators into recording or live streaming performances on demand. So this is done remotely. Our investigators are seeing videos of 6 or 7-year-old children performing sex acts for the camera on iPhones and iPads in the privacy of their own bedrooms and bathrooms. And in a number of cases, we can actually hear the voices of the parents unaware in the next room. So while the police focus on victim identification and going after the perpetrators, what we focus on as the nation's hotline is the removal of the harmful content, because we know all too well that a huge part of the trauma for survivors is a fear of being recognized by those who have viewed their abuse material. So by taking this down, we're helping to reduce the trauma that they're already likely to experience. And finally, after the shocking terror attacks in Christchurch, New Zealand last year, we were granted new powers to prevent the hosting and sharing of what is called abhorrent violent material, or AVM, which includes live streamed terrorist acts, murder, attempted murder, torture, rape, or killing. We can also use ISP blocking powers to stop an online crisis event like the Christchurch attacks going viral, but we wield these powers with great discretion. So while our reporting schemes are vital to the protection of Australians online, everything I've just described involves the action we're able to take after the damage has been done. But of course, our end goal is to prevent the online harms from happening in the first place. That is why one of our key focus areas is on prevention through evidence-based research, educational resources, and outreach programs which are designed to target specific audiences. We want to make sure that we're giving people of all ages and backgrounds the right tools to protect themselves online. Now, this might include building up their digital resilience or helping them develop strategies for de-escalating risky online situations, or improving their digital literacy, or helping them hone their critical reasoning skills. We believe this is not something that you can learn in a day, but is rather a lifelong educational journey that should begin in the home as early as possible. And indeed, our research shows that 81% of Australian parents with preschoolers say their kids are already using an internet-connected device, and over 40% say they are on a device by the age of 2. In pretty much anyone's book, that is early. It's also worth remembering that these devices aren't the passive babysitters the good old TV was for our parents, when they could safely plonk us in front of it while they made dinner or hung out the washing. When we're handing over an interconnected device, we're effectively opening up our lounge rooms to the world. And the children have lots of benefits, but there are risks, of course, too. So that's why for us, it begins with our early years program, which reinforces the guiding principles for young children: to be safe, to be kind, to be curious, but to ask for help if something goes wrong online. We believe that schools have a really important role to play here too. And while still an important cornerstone of education, the world has moved on from the traditional 3 R's, the reading, writing, and arithmetic that we learned as we were growing up. And now we believe that we must teach what we call the 4 Rs of the digital age: respect, resilience, responsibility, and critical reasoning skills. Because when kids reach adolescence, they are exposed to a whole range of pressures online that my generation never had to worry about. There are the pressures of social media, online bullying, dealing with unwanted messages or contact, pressures to engage in sexting, or just having to decide what news is real or fake. Our kids can't navigate this world alone. And it amazes me when you see parents who quite rightly won't let their young children cross the road by themselves or let them walk to the corner shop alone. And yet they're happy to give them an iPad and let them roam freely on the internet. Parents need to be just as present in their children's online lives as they are their everyday lives, and to help them guide them through these early years, prepare them for potentially tougher times ahead. Because we know that young people aged 18 to 24, an age I'm sure that many of you probably fall into, experience the highest levels of online abuse. It's also an age when we expect young people to be adults, but they may have moved out of home, maybe going to university, maybe going out to full-time work or starting a career. So their traditional support networks tend to be at their lowest. And for young people in the digital age, with instant access to almost unlimited information online, and not all of it reliable, the ability to think critically has also never been so important. Kids today need to be like intrepid explorers searching online for the oasis of truth in an ever-expanding desert of misinformation. They need to be asking important questions like, is this video I'm watching on YouTube real? Or is this news in my social media feed telling me the whole story? Being able to think critically can also be the first line of defense in keeping our children safer online. Growing up in the US, but also in Australia, the very successful stranger danger lessons we were all taught in school, kids need to apply similar lessons to online interactions. And again, parents have a big role to play, and their role of modeling a good critical thinking in the home is vital. And I know with my 3 children, I can't be lecturing them to get off Fortnite when I'm scrolling through my Twitter feed at the table. So we do have to role model this good behavior. Because this online safety education has to go from cradle to grave, we have another project called Be Connected, which is for seniors over the age of 65. Because believe it or not, the least represented population online are seniors over the age of 65. And we know worldwide over the course of COVID, they've been isolated. So having those technological tools to be able to connect with loved ones through video conferencing, through online shopping, online banking, has proven to be incredibly valuable. We have almost 150 courses online available. They're available to anyone, including those in India. And right before COVID hit, we were launching an intergenerational program, because so often parents or grandparents do rely on younger generations to help get them online and to help teach them how to navigate that well. And so now we're doing that remotely. But really what I want to talk to you about is, once we tackle the prevention and the protection, what I think we really need to be doing is thinking about, how do we minimize the threat surface for the future? We've all known about the harms for over 2 decades, and the tech companies are also well aware of how the platforms have been weaponized. And while we've heard these companies talk about safety before, we also need to make sure that it's more than just words about a new feature in a press release. It also has to be about tangible, long-term, and consistent action. And as someone who has worked across the 3 disciplines of security, privacy, and safety for the past 25 years, there is a powerful but very necessary tension that exists between these disciplines. But let's be honest, safety has always been the poor cousin no one in the family wants to talk about. But I do reject that false dichotomy that privacy and safety are diametrically opposed or somehow mutually exclusive. We're seeing that playing out in Europe right now. You may have heard from Ian with the e-privacy directive, which in the name of data protection may make it illegal for companies to scan technology and computers for known child sexual abuse images. So I guess want to put a question to all of you. How would any reasonable person prioritize the right to privacy of a pedophile over the safety, dignity, and fundamental human rights of the child that they are abusing? So I believe that we stand at a critical crossroads where a range of fundamental rights hang in the balance, and we may need to make sure that we're constantly recalibrating for the future. So how do we change the future? At eSafety, we strongly believe the answer lies in something we call safety by design. Now, just to warn you, I'm going to talk about cars again, but hear me out, because this is because what's happened with safety in the car industry is, in a nutshell, what we hope to achieve with the technology industry as well. So I think about it a little bit like this. When we get into our cars, we almost take for granted that our brakes will work, that the seatbelts will be effective, and that the airbags will deploy. We trust that the protections that have been built into our cars, guided by international standards, will keep us safer on the road. Safety is built in by design. And now, shouldn't we expect the same standards of technology companies as we navigate the internet? The challenge is that the online world was not built for safety. It was built for speed. We've spent the last 2 years working with big tech to lead them down a path that will fundamentally change how they design, develop, and deploy their products with safety at the core. The idea is that online platforms are engineered to prevent misuse, that their AI will detect and remove child sexual abuse and halt the live streaming of horrific violence, and that there are virtual seatbelts installed that will restrain our children from accessing the darkest recesses of the web. It's been just over 50 years since the world's first physical 3-point seatbelt was put into the first car. And since then, this simple and elegant device has been credited with saving millions of lives and has fundamentally changed the way the automobile industry views safety. They actually compete on safety. And we hope that big tech's seatbelt moment is just around the corner. And we need it to be, and we want them to be successful. It is my hope that one day we will take for granted the safety built into our internet services, just as we do our cars. And now the social media giants like the Facebooks, the YouTubes, the Twitters, the Microsoft have never been under more public pressure to act on the harms occurring on their platforms, as well as the influence they exert upon their users. So if you look at my birth, the US, people often point to the unbridled First Amendment as a challenge to reigning in all of this online chaos. But recently, more people are turning their attention to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act and the legal immunity it provides the technology companies from the things that their users say or do on their platforms. I have to admit, I actually had a role in shaping Section 230 in 1996 when I was at Microsoft, and the internet was nascent, because we truly believed at that time, if the internet was over-regulated, it wouldn't reach its full potential. Now, of course, social media wasn't around at that time, and Mark Zuckerberg was likely in junior high school and probably more worried about pimples and trying to impress girls than creating the world's biggest social network. But I do have to say that 24 years on, Section 230 needs a positive side that the incoming Biden-Harris administration want to take a fresh look at it, and are also outlining plans to convene a task force to deal with online harassment, which disproportionately affects women and young people. So while identifying the clear and present dangers is key to keeping people safe online, we know that technology never stays still for long. And that's why we must keep an eye on the horizon for new technologies heading our way and anticipating how they could be misused and weaponized. As the famous line goes, nothing is certain but death and taxes. But in the tech world, nothing is more certain than the fact that technology will outpace policy. So keeping ahead of the curve, we need to do a little bit of crystal ball gazing as well. Let's start by taking a look at deep fakes. Over recent decades, huge advances in technology and artificial intelligence have made it far easier to produce fake but extremely realistic images, audio and video of people saying and doing things they didn't actually say, do, or think. And they are almost impossible to detect with the naked eye. While these deep fakes have numerous positive applications in fields like entertainment, education, and medicine, they can also be weaponized to create fake news, false pornographic videos, and malicious hoaxes, usually targeting well-known people such as politicians and celebrities. Deepfakes could also be used to erode trust in governments, institutions, and even elections. Combating these deepfakes has become a technology arms race, and a race, I'm sorry to say, we are currently losing. Another manifestation of deepfakes are digital avatars, which are super realistic people generated using GANs, or general adversarial networks. This technology has been on the rise, and during COVID, the real live social media influencers have been forced indoors. A kind of spooky invasion of the body snatchers has been taking place, with virtual influencers replacing their real life counterparts online. And I'm not sure that the world actually needs more influencers, real or computer generated, but you have to marvel at the technology.
Julie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have overshot. We just have one last minute, please.
Okay, sure. I will skip through the talk on augmented reality, mixed reality, and extended reality. The risks of 5G beyond conspiracy theories. And I'm sure you've also heard about end-to-end encryption. And then there's the issue of anonymity. I guess I should have spent less time on the buildup and more on the technology opportunities and risks. But let me just finish by thanking you for all listening to me and hearing more about e-safety. A huge focus of ours is working with governments and NGOs and others internationally to share what we've learned, to share what we're doing. And I'm hoping over the next 5 to 10 years, there will be a network of other online safety commissioners, because we do need to work together to make sure that we're looking after the future and tackling these issues together. And I just also welcome everyone to check out esafety.gov.au. I think you'll find it's one of the most comprehensive online safety hubs out there. We welcome your questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Julie, for joining the Young Indian Masoom Summit and sharing your thoughts on child safety. It gave us an insight on 3 Ps: protection, prevention, and proactive change, and also impact of cyberbullying on young children. It is worrying to see how the internet-connected devices leaves an impact on young children. The session was thought-provoking, and I'm sure the takeaway to our members